Welcome to Stop Overthinking, the podcast for overthinkers, people pleasers, and perfectionists who want to feel calm and confident enough to handle whatever life sends your way. I'm your host, Kristen Odegaard, a women's life and mindset coach, lifelong educator, and recovering perfectionist. Hello, and welcome back to the Stop Overthinking podcast. I'm so glad that you're here today. This episode, number 13, I'm calling You Are Not the Reference Point. And if you were, growing up, you might have had parents or maybe even friends or family remind you sometimes that it's not about you. And this is a spin-off of that, in the sense that we think that we are the norm and that the way things should be done, the things that we think about, what we consider normal, is the reference point. And so when people are out of that normal range that we consider, and this is what they should do, or this is what I would have done in that situation, and therefore what they're doing is wrong or different. And this is about opening up your brain and thinking that you may not be the reference point. A little bit different than saying you're not the center of the world. I don't think most women would really think that anyway, because we have such a tendency to put other people first. But it's this notion that our thoughts are the way that things should be. If you've heard me talk about your instruction manual before, it's kind of the same idea. We think about things through our own filters, and that could be our upbringing, our education, life experiences, values. We all have different biases, even if you think that you don't. And so when we are considering a person or a situation, it's going through all of these filters. And my filters are not the same as yours, as another person, even if it's your family member, even if it's your best friend. They aren't going to be exactly the same. And this differentiation is important to note because it's a big source of our miscommunication and frustration and disappointment. So, for example, if a parent or somebody close to you dies and you have coworkers that don't say much about it to you, maybe they don't say anything about it. And you're like, it's because people don't care. How rude. Any decent human being would have asked me how I'm doing and if I needed anything, and would have been there for me, even though these are people I talk to every single day. And so your norm of reference is your thinking there. But it's also possible that the other people could have been thinking it's personal and it's private. And if you want to talk about it, you will. And it's not to say that either one is right or wrong, but most of the time, we will internalize this as our thoughts are the correct way, and therefore other people are rude and inconsiderate or frustrating or whatever label you want to put on it. So just realizing people don't always think like you do or like I do. And just because it's a thought in your brain doesn't mean that it's more right than someone else. Before you come to thought work, a lot of times we don't even realize how many thoughts are going through our mind, and we think that it's just there. And if I'm thinking it, it must be true. It must be right. This feels, I get a gut feeling from this. And so therefore I must act on it. And there's a whole spectrum of options other than just that one thought. So this will come up a lot of times with, like I said, with communication styles. And you can see this in terms of, people who want to talk face to face, people who are more comfortable in writing with email or text, and as well as the amount of time in turnaround. So you might have a partner or friends that, you know, you communicate with, and they are on their phone frequently, and you get responses within a matter of either immediately or within an hour, and that becomes your expectation. And so people who care about me or people who want to hear from me respond in this time frame. And so then it somebody doesn't do that, and maybe they take an entire day to respond or more hours than you want. It isn't that it's inconsiderate because they're not responding in the time frame that you want. It's that you're using your norms, your preferences, your biases, your experiences, and comparing that with somebody else. So this isn't to say that you can't have those preferences or those kinds of things, but it's when we are having miscommunications, when you are feeling the frustration, when you are feeling the disappointment, it's being able to check in and look at what are you using as the reference point, and if it is completely centered around you, is that appropriate? And this can be hard because you're like, well, of course I have these preferences. Why, what's wrong with the way that I do that? And it's not a matter of being right or wrong. It's recognizing that your thoughts are influencing greatly your feelings. So if you are mad, frustrated, feeling disrespected, any of those kinds of things, it's because of the way you're thinking about it. And the way you're thinking about it is not set in stone. You have the possibility to change it if you so want. And that is going to shift how you feel as well. So another thing that I see with communication styles is often about kind of the time frame in which people want to address things. So perhaps with your preference is to deal with the situation right away. Maybe within a couple hours you're having a disagreement with your partner and you want to deal with it. And maybe the other person, partner or otherwise, is a processor and it needs to take time, maybe even a couple of days before they're ready to have this conversation. And you're stewing about it, thinking that they're avoiding you and that you need to deal with this. You need to deal with this right now. And that is your reference point that you're putting there like this is the way that it needs to be done in order for you to feel differently. The reality is it's the way you're thinking about it that's creating your feelings, and you can think about it differently and feel differently about it. And if your brain's exploding, that's that's okay. All of this is about having bigger awareness. Another place that some of these will come up is like crowdsourcing opinions. And so we all do this to a certain extent, and I've cautioned you and different times about it. And this is another reason. Your friends and your family are and people that you spend a lot of time with, you have chosen to be with them because you generally get along. They have the same priorities and values and some of the same experiences that you have. So if you are going and venting about, somebody being really mean to you, most of the time, those people are going to agree with you because their reference point is pretty similar. And you have chosen that intentionally. And that can make you feel good. It can make you feel validated. And most of the time, there's not a problem with that. But there are things in your life that it's really helpful to be able to have the unbiased opinions or somebody who thinks differently to challenge your thinking, to be able to see bigger and get you out of the same patterns and habits and, thinking pathways that you've always been in. So when you're crowdsourcing these thoughts and thinking that the more people agree with you makes you more right, is validating you. And it may even be that some of these people are thinking that, of course, I'm going to validate you because I don't want you to hurt. I don't want you to feel bad. So there, you just can't get that unbiased opinion. And sometimes that's really important. So we get opinions on all sorts of things, parenting and relationships and communication styles and how to handle things at work. And I'm just encouraging you to think bigger than just yourself. One of the ways that people start doing this is doing some thought work. And so, for example, we'll go back to somebody who doesn't want to address a conflict right away. You want to be able to deal with it. You want to talk about it. You want to hash it out. And the other person, maybe you've labeled them as avoidant. It doesn't matter, but the other person isn't on the same page as you. So initially with thought work, people may think things like, well, it's possible for other people to still love and care about me, even if they're not willing to talk about the situation right now. And getting used to the idea that this person can still feel affectionate and love or care, whatever you want, even if they don't want to talk about it right now. But this thought actually can be problematic in this context as well, because of the even if. Even in your mind, as you're trying to expand and think that other people can still care about me, your reference point is that the situation needs to be talked about right now. It needs to be dealt with. The norm for you is talking about it right now, and they're out of that range. And so you're willing to consider that it's still okay, even if they are not agreeing with you, or even if they aren't at the same point as you. So again, you're using yourself as that reference point. When I'm working with people and as they are starting to kind of explore and do some of their own reframing with different things, I would pose this as it's possible for people to still to love and care about me and talk about the situation whenever we're both ready for it. Or it's possible for people to love and care about me, and it doesn't matter when we talk about it. And that's going to be the hard part, because you want to take care of it your way in your time frame. And so this is broadening your perspective, being curious about what else is possible and what else is out there. And this will absolutely help you in your relationships when you can expand your thinking, that it's not about you, that you aren't the reference point and everybody else is out of sync with you, to just open up the possibilities. And it doesn't mean you have to change. It doesn't mean that it's, giving in to other people. It's just opening your mind. And then you get to decide how I want to handle it. Okay, it's possible that I'm making this all all about me. Wow, that's interesting. Where do I want to go with this? And then you can take the thoughts and play and explore and decide what you want to do. This is an invitation for you that if you are feeling hurt or sad or frustrated or disrespected or any of those things that are bothersome to you, the way you don't like feeling, besides just recognizing how you're thinking about it and what the thoughts are behind it, to take a look at what is the reference point and why. And are you willing to explore that, to expand your thinking, to get curious? And there may be topics that you're not ready to do that quite yet, or maybe ever. And that is completely fine. So you can start with something small. Start with how you have a relationship with somebody that's more of an acquaintance, not somebody that's close to you, or a situation that's really a hot topic and can and your thoughts about it are triggering and set off big feelings. Start smaller and experiment there and work your way up to the more complex types of situations. So, as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting this podcast and sharing it with others. I really appreciate that as my audience is growing every week. I would love for you to post this on your own social media and tag me. And if you have any questions, you can always submit those at my website, coachwithkristen.com, or on Facebook or Instagram. Have a great week. Thank you for listening to the Stop Overthinking podcast with Kristen O'Horn. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who would benefit from the message. To learn more about working with me and links to social media and free resources, head over to my website, coachwithkristen.com. That's Kristen spelled Kristen. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. Have